Good morning, friends. I am in the Black Barn, and it is the Monday before Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day this year is on a Saturday, and it is the first weekend that we are reopening the dinner series at the Black Barn for Farrand Hall Estate Dining. And what that means is there's a couple little things that I typically do before we get ready to reopen, some sort of like, not necessarily cleaning, but some detail work that I'm gonna take you along with. That it's not glamorous and people don't probably think about this, but I'm gonna show you what goes into getting ready to reopen. So if you've been to dinner here at the Farrand Hall Estate, you probably recognize this cabinet. It holds wine glasses, water glasses, but it also holds all of our silverware collection. And let me show you what we have going on here. So here's the cabinet. We bought this from a vintage seller in Grand Rapids early June, several years ago. And tucked back in here in this little, well, it's not little, it's actually big, this tool, it's kind of heavy. You can see we have all of our forks here, and all of our silverware. And this is a pattern that we only use one pattern here at dinner, and it's this. And this is a vintage, it is silver pattern. Some of it's from the 30s and some of it's a little, I think earlier than that. But what happens is, because it is silver, it does tarnish. And especially on pieces that don't get used a ton, like you can see the spoon here. Well, that's not that bad. It's hard to tell in this light, but some of these aren't looking their best. You can see, well, after we polish it up, you'll see. So there, what's happening today is I'm polishing silverware. Okay, so we're gonna start this, and this is just how I do this, and I'm sure we'll go through a lot of different ways to do this. But what I have found over doing this for several years now is that, yes, there are ways to polish silverware that don't use chemicals, but in the volume that I have to do this, I have found that it's really, you have to use a chemical. It's a little unavoidable, and I'm sure somebody will, not be happy about the chemicals. But so the first thing when you're using chemicals is you have to put on gloves, and I'm using actually double gloves here because I don't want to have to replace these, and the fork tines have stabbed me in the past. So I'm just using these black nitrile gloves, which the kitchen uses. So these are really tight. And what I'm using today, and I've been using for maybe the past 2 years, is Tarnex. I have used the Right Silver Cream in the past, but I think that this actually works the best, and it works maybe the fastest. Now, when we talk about polishing silverware here, so why this pattern? It was not really intentional. This pattern is from Community Silver, and it is something that I bought my first set of it at a resale shop in Chicago, and it was very inexpensive, and I really fell in love with it. One of the things I really liked was the small fork, which maybe you can see here. It has this little detail on the inside here, and I really fell in love with it. It's really beautiful, and it has just a whimsy to it that I really enjoyed. So what I did here, I say we a lot, but it's me, is I was buying sets from eBay. That's how a lot of this stuff comes into our collections. It is fun and it is exciting to buy stuff at resale shops or at antique stores, but it's not always practical all the time because you're just relying on the luck of finding it, and that's that's not always practical. Okay, so if it was not February and if it was not, I think it's like 20 degrees today, I would be doing this outside because this is a chemical and it does smell, but right now it's just not able, I'm not able to do that. Now, these chemicals, don't wear anything you like while you're doing this. If you get this on your clothes, it will leave like, I don't want to say a bleach mark, but it'll leave a spot. And I'm doing this on a stainless steel baking sheet right here. Or actually, this is probably aluminum. And I'm not completely following the directions because I'm doing this in such high volume that this is just how I do it. I'm not gonna. So I have my little polishing station right here, but I also have this little container here of water. Now what I do is, I'll just start doing it. I'm gonna open this, and this has already been used from last time. This little shake, I don't know if it matters. One thing I've learned, do not get this on stainless steel. We have stainless steel sinks in the barn and in the house, and this will leave a mark on your stainless steel. Don't do it, be careful, unless you don't care about the marks. I'm just using a kitchen sponge here because it's what we have. You could use a rag. In the past, I've done this on sort of plastic buckets, or in plastic buckets to catch some of this. But right now, so I'm just gonna do a light brush. And what you'll see is, you might not be able to see because of the lighting, is that it's immediately brightening. And this is all I want. If you do this twice a year, it'll maintain a nice look. Now the reason in the directions, they don't want you to directly dip the silverware into this liquid, probably because it's gonna damage the finish. And then I put it in the water just to help remove the rest of the chemicals so it doesn't end up eating away at the silver. And then I'll keep doing this until I feel like the water here can't support it anymore. The one thing that does get a little annoying if you don't keep up with this is that the inside of the tines, like in here, will end up tarnishing, and that can be a little annoying. That's why it's nice to have maybe a newer sponge as opposed to a cloth that sometimes will get down into those little grooves to help remove that discoloration. Now the silverware that we keep out here, our events will go up to 80 people. So we do keep probably service for 100, just in case we need it. We do have silverware up to, I want to say 160, because a couple years ago we did several large weddings, and to keep it uniform, we did get some more silverware to enable that look. And when you're at a Farrand Hall dinner, if you're used to going to nicer restaurants, sometimes they will do silverware switch outs in between courses, so you get a clean fork and a clean knife or whatever the appropriate silverware is in between courses. We do not do that here at Farrand Hall. We really just don't have the resources, specifically from a silverware standpoint, but also I don't think that that's necessarily the experience or the look that we are thinking that we want. I like to think that Farrand Hall is fussy enough that it will, it's an experience, but yet it is approachable enough that you are keeping your same fork and your same knife throughout dinner. Now what I do see, this is actually a different pattern here. I feel like this is called Lily of the Valley. This is another pattern we have. This is the only other pattern that we have. And some of this, I think this is from a slightly different time period, because at some point, I'm sure someone could help me in the comments here, but at some point, The silverware did get a protective coating on it so that it didn't have to be polished as regularly, which I'm sure everybody who was going through this during that period of time was really happy to have. And it makes everything a lot easier. Some of those pieces probably don't have to be polished quite as often. I will still obviously polish them because I want them all to go through the same cycle at the same time. But this is what it looks. And you know, I wouldn't go crazy. If you're thinking about doing this at home, don't go crazy, because when you have silverware that has these little sort of like, I guess I'll call these kind of like little tines or indentations in them, they do build up polish. They do build up tarnish, but what it actually does is, because of the way it's cast, it kind of adds this nice little shadow highlight to it. So, you know, you can go crazy and remove all of it and just have it perfectly shining, but sometimes it's nice just to keep that little bit of shadow. You know, we get quite a range of people who come to dinner at Farrand Hall, and I can tell you that after polishing silverware, there is always a guest or two who will notice. I don't want to generalize and say it's always a woman, but it's mostly women who are noticing just how shiny it is. Because most silverware that you are probably buying today, it's not silver. It's going to be stainless steel, or maybe it has some sort of enamel coating on it. You know, if you're buying like black or gold silverware. But this is silver, and this is why it oxidizes like this. Now, some people, I mean, we could be putting these into Tupperware containers that are a little more airtight, and that would help prevent some of the tarnish, because it is related to oxygen. But just simply because of the rotation of how this is used weekly, we don't put them in containers like that. Now, if I am putting things into storage, I will put it into like a small Tupperware container, just so that it prevents or slows down the tarnish, but you really can't stop it. It always happens. So, you know, we try to not use chemicals here, like really toxic chemicals like this, because just they're not good for your body, they're not good for the environment, and if you can avoid using them, if I can avoid using them, I typically try. But this is just one of those situations where I don't think it's worth it, trying an alternative method. Many years ago, when we first started doing Farrand Hall, I was really making an effort to be as natural or as chemical free as I could. And I tried the method of, I'm sure maybe you've seen this, I'm sure you can find a video, where people sometimes they do it in a bathtub or a kitchen sink, or maybe just like a plastic container, where you get a piece of aluminum foil, and people are putting salt, and then I want to say it's baking soda. Like maybe it's half equal parts baking soda and salt, and then you pour boiling water over it. And I am not a chemist, so I'm not going to pretend to tell you how it works. But what happens is that there's a reaction between the aluminum and the salt, and it pulls the tarnish off of the silver. And sometimes, depending on how tarnished it is, you end up kind of seeing it on the aluminum. And what I noticed, because I did this once, I did it, I think I polished, like, if I'm being honest, probably maybe 250 pieces of silverware using this method, and it was not fast. It took a long time, and I don't use that method anymore just because it didn't make any sense. Maybe if you're using, or if you're trying to just deal with like a tray, or like a vase or some sort of larger silver piece that you want to brighten up and you don't want to use chemicals, you could use that, because really those are things most people probably have in their house: aluminum foil, baking soda, and salt, and obviously your favorite silver tray. But that's just not really, it hasn't been practical for what I have been needing to do, so we don't do that anymore. But it is something you could do at home. Now, before you polish these, the instructions would say to wash them. All of the silverware is clean already. It's probably a little, it's probably not dusty. It's sitting in the cabinet, and the cabinet's always closed. So this is nice. Another thing that you'll see, and I'll show you on one of these knives, is some of the knives. Let me see if I can find one. Well, there's two different knives that we have here, and I think that these came from different, obviously the patterns or the production changed over time. So if you can see here, this knife, the blade part of the knife here, this is all silver, and this is tarnished. The handle is silver, but this knife here, this is stainless steel, and it says it right here, deluxe stainless. So, you know, I'm not sure. I'm gonna guess maybe at like a couple years later, they ended up making these stainless steel knives with the silver handle. This makes it a lot easier to clean, and also these large knife blades here, they don't look their best when they're not very clean. And so I prefer to use the stainless steel ones when we're setting up. If we have enough to do the whole table in that, I will do that. But it's not always a given. It's so pretty, especially in summer when the silverware is all polished and it's out in the sun and it's just shining so brightly on the table. It's one of those little things that I think people notice. I don't know if they know the amount of work that goes into this, but this is kind of just how I think we view Farrand Hall, right? There are moments where I enjoy activities like this because it's a slow activity. There's no way to rush this. I will be here doing this for probably the next several hours. I won't make you sit here with me the entire time, but it is an activity that you cannot rush, and that I like it because it forces me to not be on my phone. If I wasn't doing this video, I'd be listening to music. But it's kind of like a mindful activity. If you've ever heard people talk about mindful exercises where you try to not trick your brain, but you get yourself to focus on things so that you're in that moment. You're putting all your attention into maybe just this individual fork in this moment and making sure that it looks the way you want it to for just those brief moments while you have your hands on it, and that you're not thinking about your email or do you need to do laundry today? Does the bathroom need to be cleaned? Is it ever gonna not be freezing outside? You know, it kind of helps you to get into a little bit of a groove that I think most people probably enjoy. It's kind of like cleaning your house, but it's polishing your silverware. And it's, you know, as Martha would say, it's a good thing. It's a fun thing. And I think things like this, you know, especially if you are thinking about changing your silverware, or maybe adding to your collection, you could have something like this that you use every day. I think every day everyday use of beautiful things is really important. You know, in the past, I think, you know, at least for my family and my grandparents, there were times where you would have special plateware or special things that were only used during certain times of the year. And that is important. I'm not saying to not do that. But I think that if you want to add some just everyday beauty, maybe we could even say glamour, to your home, to your life, integrating vintage pieces like this in is really easy, and it's going to be very cost effective for you to achieve this. When you look at new silverware that's being put out today, sometimes these sets of silverware, I mean, because they'll be sold maybe by the place setting, so you'll see a set of 5 pieces, probably a knife, a dinner fork, a dessert fork, probably a dinner spoon, and maybe a small spoon. You know, these could range. They could. I mean, I don't think you can even go to like Target and get a set of silverware for maybe under $15. So if you're buying a bunch of them, you know, you're spending a decent amount of money. And if you like it, buy it. I believe that. If you like something, buy it. But you could also be buying vintage, and then you are kind of breaking that consumer cycle, and you're gonna get something that is most likely made with a higher quality material that is going to last a lot longer. And you will most likely spend less money. One thing that I do when I'm searching for things to buy, like when I'm adding to these collections of silverware and I go onto eBay, one thing to look for is the buy it now option, because a lot of times people will have things listed for, I don't want to say like silly low prices, but they'll have things listed for prices that maybe are very reasonable. And I have found some incredible deals on silverware on eBay. One piece of advice is and this has happened to me, I don't know if I would buy a heavily tarnished set of silverware again. I did that once because it was incredibly cheap, and it was really hard to get the tarnish off. And I feel like maybe some of it even went beyond tarnishing to where the silver plating had been removed and some of the knives would rust, which obviously we don't use those, but you would want to be careful with that. I mean, you could still buy it and polish it up if you feel compelled to do that, but I personally wouldn't, just because I've had some bad experiences. The other thing is, if it's not a buy it now item and it's just a regular auction item, if you're not an eBay person, what you'll see, a lot of the sellers will have options for make an offer, and you can make an offer that is below their listing price. And sometimes the seller will come back and counter offer you, or they might just accept your offer as you submitted it. But it's just another way to sort of barter. You know, I for many years was maybe a little shy at asking for better prices, especially in stores. But that is just part of the game, and people a lot of times expect you to ask for a better price. It doesn't mean you're always going to get one, but it is something that you can do, and eBay really does facilitate that in a really great way. So I would encourage you to do that. Another fun thing about this set of silverware, and you probably can't see it here, but I'm going to show you anyway, is each of the patterns has this little rectangular I'm not even sure what I'm gonna call this, almost like a marker. And this was for the monogram of the family. So this one right here has this beautiful sort of, maybe it's Old English font, like this S here, very elegant. So not all of them are gonna come with this. A lot of them, people would have bought these and not had them engraved. They just bought the silverware as it is and didn't have that done. But that is something that you would see for some of this silverware of the period. If you're really crazy, you could probably find one with your monogram on it that somebody someplace else at some point in time had made for them. That could be really fun. I know we have some that say F on them, or I have some that, my last name's Hagen, so I have some that say H, even though people probably would never put that together. And it's a fun little thing. Okay, so this little water bath here with our silverware is almost full. I don't want to make it too heavy because that's annoying, but I'm gonna take you over to the sink and we are going to see how this all washes out. And I'm gonna show you how we do this with some of our dish racks. Okay, so I just brought the second load of silverware over, and the sun is shining in the window, and you can see just how beautiful this is. And I wanted to show it next to the unpolished silverware. So this is the unpolished silverware, and you can see it, I mean, it's still shiny, but it has this underlying gray color to it, which when you go from this to this, everything feels better, right? Yeah. Okay, so we are at the, maybe I'd call this the second stage, or the final stage. So all of this silverware has been polished, right? I was using Tarnex, and it has been washed and rinsed. And now what I have to do is give it its final sort of polish, but this is really just a surface polish. The tarnish has been removed, and this is what we would do after any Farrand Hall dinner. So I'm just actually gonna dip these in here again in case they're dry, which they're not dry right now, but you can't get the water spots off if they're dry. So then dry it off so that there's no little watermarks on here, because you'll see those little circles once they dry, and they are quite visible. In my opinion, because I'm doing so much of this, I'm really focusing on the upper part of the spoon. I don't have any knives in here right now, but I'd be focusing on the blade of the knife. That's a spot that is very visible if there is tarnish, or in the case of the forks, the part of the fork right below the tines right here, that's where you'd see a lot of it. But they all kind of just get a little wipe down before they get put into their little mugs again and get put back into the cabinet to be used on Friday. This is very time consuming. But again, it's an activity that only happens twice a year, maybe 3 times if I'm feeling like it's needed. I'm not on a crusade to have perfect silverware. That's not at all what I am trying to do. But I do want them to look nice for dinner. I think most people know that silver flatware, I guess we could say, does tarnish, and if there is a spot that's not as shiny, I think most people recognize that it doesn't mean that the spoon's dirty, it just means that it's a little polished or a little tarnished. Now, this one here, maybe you can see this. This has a little bit of this like brown in here, and This did not come off. Now, this wouldn't upset me if I was a guest, but I would say we would try not to use this unless we have to. I know that we have more of these spoons than we need, so I'm gonna set this one aside. I will probably put it in a container for backup silverware in case we need it at some point. But if I can take it out of the rotation for dinner for a moment, that'll be a good thing for us. One thing we don't have a ton of, but they do get used around this time of the year, are the soup spoons. We love a nice round soup spoon, but we also have these dinner spoons. So these are the 3 spoons. This is the tarnished one. The small spoon could be a teaspoon, dessert spoon, dinner spoon, soup spoon, dinner knife, and I know they're in here somewhere, but we have the small fork. We don't really use them as salad forks, they're usually just dessert forks. But these are the primary pieces of silverware that we use for dinner. We also have some sharp knives with wood handles that are new, they're not vintage. And we do mix those in just because there are certain courses that will require a serrated knife, which, you know, these vintage butter knives are just not cutting it. So that's the little exception. And then a couple years ago, I bought this really beautiful, I love it. Everyone who works for us hates them. These really beautiful bamboo silverware sets, which they look great. They have a stainless steel, I don't have any out here, I'd show them to you. They have a stainless steel top, so like the little chunk here would be stainless steel, and then the bottom part is bamboo on all of them. And I think they're wonderful. They're just, I guess what we didn't know, and I should have known this, or thought about this before we bought them, is that they can't go through the washing machine. Just because the dishwasher gets so hot, we don't want to worry about the glue holding it together really being damaged. So they end up being hand washed, which if you're doing a dinner for 80 people and you're thinking about 3 pieces of silverware at a minimum per person, which it probably ends up being 4, it's a lot of hand washing of silverware. So we don't use them unless it's maybe a special request for a wedding, because we do make exceptions for those types of events, but they do not get used. So maybe that's where a newer piece of silverware, these are just easier to use because they go through the dishwasher and we don't have to care about them as much in that way. They are fairly indestructible aside from being tarnished. So anyway, thank you for following along on my housekeeping work today as we get ready to reopen the Black Barn for Valentine's Day. We still have some tickets available to the Friday dinner. The Saturday dinner has been sold out for a moment, so that's not an option. But if you want to come to dinner on Friday the 13th, which is this Friday, we still have tickets available. And then I would also encourage you just to look at our website to see what other offerings we have available, and you can come and appreciate how shiny the silverware is in person and join us at the table and make some friends and have some good food and enjoy what we do here at Farrand. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.